Hi, I'm Jessica. My presentation explores the psychological, social, and systemic barriers behind why so many survivors choose to stay silent. Let's begin with a brief introduction. Silencing of trauma is not new. In the late 1800s, Sigmund Freud worked with a patient known as Anna O, who had clear symptoms of trauma, but at the time they were dismissed as hysteria, another way of saying that they thought she was being dramatic. When they actually let her talk about her experiences, though, they found that they got better. This became known as the talking cure. Due to societal pressure, though, Freud abandoned his work with Anna and the idea that trauma, especially sexual trauma, could cause psychological harm. His withdrawal became one of the earliest examples of how traumatic experiences, especially those involving abuse, were minimized. I'd like to share a quote by Judith Herman that reads, "When traumatic events are of human design, those who bear witness are caught in the conflict between victim and perpetrator." This highlights how bearing witness to another person's trauma creates a feeling of discomfort for many. Here, the bystander's dilemma is rooted in the just world hypothesis, which is the belief that bad things don't happen to good people. When someone discloses sexual violence, people feel pressure to explain it away, but they must choose a path. They can support the victim, which requires them to listen and stay with that discomfort, or they can choose to take the easier path, which protects their worldview by discrediting the victim and choosing to forget. Sexual violence is incredibly common. Someone experiences an assault every 74 seconds. Every 9 minutes, someone is a child, but most people never report it. 4 out of 5 will stay silent, and when they do speak up, chances of receiving justice are extremely low. Only 25 out of every 1,000 cases see justice. As a student, a future victim advocate, and a survivor myself, I care deeply about this topic because I know how complicated disclosure can be and how misunderstood survivors often feel. I don't intend to speak for anyone, but rather to understand why so many people struggle to tell. Trauma doesn't just leave us with bad memories, instead, it changes how our brain works. Our brain can get stuck in survival mode, and instead of being able to make sense of what happened, the body stays alert, ready to fight, run, or shut down. And long after the danger passes, stress chemicals may keep signaling as if we were still under threat. So, when survivors can't just talk about it, it's not a weakness. It's our body trying to protect us, and that can make disclosure incredibly difficult. Another major barrier is dissociation, which can cause the brain to check out so that we can survive a traumatic event. This leaves memories feeling fuzzy, out of order, or sometimes missing entirely. Trauma keeps our brain on alert, so it's not that survivors don't want to tell their story, but trauma can make remembering and explaining it difficult. After something overwhelming, the shame can become immense. Survivors often start thinking something is wrong with me. This is my fault. Trauma distorts self-trust. Many people feel crazy and begin to question themselves, sometimes leading to complete denial and disbelief or blocking of the memory. Nothing makes sense, and that creates a numbness that feels like weakness or a failure. Disclosure requires that survivors have self-trust, but trauma erodes it. Coercive control is a system designed to break someone down over time. We often see this in women who have experienced domestic violence or children who have been abused. Abusers use all sorts of intimidation, including threats, isolation, emotional manipulation, or financial abuse, as shown by the diagram of the wheel of power and control. If we can't escape something that poses a threat to our life, we're forced to adapt to survive. This creates a willing victim mentality because staying silent means that we stay alive. 92% of survivors tell at least one person, and that first reaction often determines whether they can continue to speak up. Research shows us that negative reactions like questioning survivors' stories, minimizing, or blaming them mimic that initial loss of control all over again. So comments like, "Are you sure that's what happened?" or "Why didn't you fight harder?" may seem small, but to the survivor, they become a second betrayal of their trust, compounding symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Survivors may also be hurt by the institutions they depend upon for safety. Schools, churches, sports organizations, healthcare systems, youth groups, the criminal justice system, and the military. All of these institutions often minimize, dismiss, or deny reports to protect their own reputation. Research shows that when an institution responds poorly to a survivor, they experience more shame, anxiety, and loss of self-trust. Institutional betrayal doesn't just fail to protect survivors, it also silences them. Even the criminal justice system itself can act as a gatekeeper that silences survivors. At every stage, whether it be the police, investigators, prosecutors, or the courts, survivors face discouraging barriers. Police may minimize complaints to keep crime data low. Investigations often lack follow-up, and survivors may fear retaliation from the perpetrator. Prosecutors may drop or reduce charges without consulting with the survivor, and court processes like cross-examinations can be retraumatizing. When the system feels unsafe, survivors learn very quickly that speaking up comes with a cost. In the courtroom, survivors don't just have to relive the trauma, they are also judged for how they react to it. They may be subtly blamed through ideas of shared responsibility, as the defense often tries to put the victim at fault for what happened. They're also unrealistically held to expectations of being the ideal victim, which is someone who's modest, self-assured, doesn't have any mental health problems, someone who didn't delay reporting the crime at all, which is just unrealistic. During cross-examination, normal trauma responses might be interpreted as dishonesty, and survivors are discredited and treated as unreliable until proven otherwise. When we talk about supporting survivors, it's really about creating an environment where they feel safe enough to speak, safe enough to heal. Trauma responses matter. We need to believe survivors, listen to them, and don't ask questions that can feel blaming. Mental health, body-based healings, and consistent support from loved ones and community members are important. At the center of healing is survivor choice. They need to take back control over what was taken from them. The healing process is going to look different for each survivor. They need autonomy in that process. When somebody does choose to share their experience, they're taking a huge risk, so how we respond to them matters. Saying things like, "I believe you," "You didn't deserve this," "You're not alone," are phrases that communicate safety and support instead of judgment. Believing, validating, protecting, and empowering survivors are really the foundation of a supportive response. To counter the power and control model that we looked at earlier, I put together a survivor empowerment wheel. Instead of taking a survivor's voice away, these pathways focus on giving it back to them. Each section represents something that survivors can control in their healing, like safety, seeking support, acknowledging that we all heal on our own timelines, reframing shame, knowing that it's not their fault, and caring for themselves. It's meant to encourage empowerment and autonomy so that each survivor gets to decide the direction of their own healing. We'll end the presentation on one last quote from Judith Herman. It says, "Recovery can take place only within the context of relationships. It cannot occur in isolation." This is a reminder to us that healing isn't something people do alone. It requires at least one person or one institution to respond with care. Thank you.